Hey everyone, I wanted to give you guys an update. If you're reading my article, Part 2 to A Basket of Deplorables, there's an important aspect to this article, in this case, the criminal case for which I'm wrongfully convicted. And I wanted to take a moment to explain it because it's so important. Now, what I mentioned in the article about Chris Miguel presenting me at a local bar with evidence from the SEC, which he believes he could use to blackmail me to get what he wanted. I didn't at that time know how critical that information that he was holding in his hand was going to turn out. For those of you who don't know, the SEC is the Securities and Exchange Commission. The evidence in which, or that information rather, that Chris was holding in his hands was information showing that the SEC had revoked my securities license because I failed to comply with their investigation. Now, the reason that people would be thinking that, well, why did you fail to comply with an investigation? Well, one is because I wasn't living in the country. I was living in Mexico, and my previous address in the U.S. wasn't going to forward my mail to Mexico. So I wasn't that I didn't want to comply. It was that I just didn't even know that it existed. And I didn't really care because I had no intention of ever working in the securities industry ever again. But the reason that this was so important is because this very blackmail information, which was what was used, literally published hours after I was arrested for the crime for which I'm now in prison. And the reason that's important is because if you think about it, I wasn't anyone who was newsworthy. For a journalist in California named Glenn Roberts Jr., who normally wrote science fiction and wrote science-related articles, I think, for Berkeley, to suddenly decide to write an article about me having had my securities licenses revoked wouldn't make sense because nobody would publish that because I wasn't anybody. It was also important to note the SEC securities revoked my licenses, but the SEC is not a law enforcement organization. So they would have had to send their information to a law enforcement agency like the FBI or a state or agency, and all of those denied to prosecute the case because there was no case. So they were just suspending my licenses for a failure to comply. But the reason that this was important is that when it was published by Glenn Roberts Jr., it made me seem like I was some kind of con man or swindler, and that's the very narrative that the police cling to when they were denying me bond, when they were trying to paint an image with the media so that I could be convicted by media before I ever even got to the trial. And what's interesting is this: how did Glenn Roberts know that this was even going to happen? I mean, think about that. Someone would have had to told him that I was going to get arrested for murder, which means someone had to have known what was happening. And is it a coincidence that that very information happened to be the very information which Chris Miguel used to blackmail me? I think not. So, look, I just wanted to give everyone some insight. I hope it helps. I hope you're enjoying the article, and I hope you'll keep reading to read Part 3 when I bring it to its culmination. So, thank you very much, and I hope you have a great day.